Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Voltron Legendary Defender video. This one's going to be my review for Voltron Legendary Defender Season 6, Episodes 1 to 4. So the way I'm doing this is that I haven't watched the last 3 episodes, it's a 7-episode season. I watched the first 4, record this video, upload it, and then literally watch the other 3 episodes, record another video. So you'll see my review for episode 5, 6, and 7. A little bit later on. It'll be uploaded probably 2-3 hours after this one, but the idea here is that it allows me to give all of the episodes enough focus, whereas I think if I try to review all 7 in one, some of them will get forgotten, and I like having a little bit of like, oh, I have to speculate on what happens in the next couple of episodes as well. So just be aware of that, that I haven't seen those last 3 episodes. So when I'm speculating, it's because I literally haven't seen them. But yeah, so far 4 episodes in. Obviously, let's get the episode 3 out of the way. It's hard to not just look at this episode and kind of be like, okay, like, it's filler. Like, it's fun filler, but it is filler. Like, it doesn't add really anything to what's actually going on here. It's cool. Like, it's a kind of Dungeons and Dragons, like, Voltron style. And in that sense, like, it was enjoyable to see how they kind of imagined each character in the game, but it was so like the word that comes to mind is like indulgent. It felt like, okay, like, you're really committing to this, but like, why? Like, I get a reference, I get having an episode that's a little bit more fun, but like, why this and so like heavily this, just randomly in the middle of very important stuff happening, like the cliffhanger from the end of like episode 2 is like, and you go into this and you don't reference any of that stuff at all, and then 4 is like in a crazy episode. It just felt like mistimed in a way, and Voltron's kind of done that a little bit over its run, where it's been going really well with the plot and stuff like that, and it just decides randomly to take a break and just do a more kind of fun comedic episode. And I think they kind of tonally get it a little wrong in the grand scheme of where everything overall is. It worked a little better here because they sort of left things, at least on that side of the story, with the Paladins, and that like things are going okay. Like Semdak is out there, there's obviously issues happening, but they're not required immediately to jump into battle, so there's a little bit of time to rest. I just don't feel it was like, when you discuss this episode, like, what's the discussion about? I don't think it's about the characters, it's not about the plot. The discussion about the episode is about, like, why they did it, what all the little references are to, like, what kind of fantasy games are they referencing, why did they decide to do this episode, what inspired them to do this one, and so on. That's what I think this episode is about more so than anything else, and in that sense, that's not really the stuff that particularly interests me in the show. It's why, like with Avatar, which is what I mainly do on my channel, the episode Nightmares and Daydreams is one of my weakest episodes, probably in my opinion the weakest episode, because like on the Aang side of the story, he's having all these weird dreams and daydreams and nightmares, and they just kind of use that to have a bunch of references, and it's like, you could use this episode to actually do something with the characters, but instead you're just lost in these references, and that's a little bit of what I get from this. Like, I enjoyed looking at the episode and seeing what, like, crazy fantasy story type stuff that they had, because with Voltron you get crazy, like, space sci-fi stuff and what they explain and so on. So it was cool to see them, like, just be like swords, crazy fantasy backstories, but there's no real takeaway from the episode as such. Like, Shiro kind of has this kind of, oh, I'm clearing my head type moment. They, I think, heavily, foreshadow or like hint at like, oh, Shiro keeps dying in the game. Hint, 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 hint. That, like, that's what happens in like the original Voltron, and I assume, like, it's a heavy speculation from some people that they may kill Shiro off at some point, because of what's going on with his story and the clear setup that Keith is obviously like returning. So there was that. But outside of that, it was just like, okay, fun references and stuff like that. I don't think it's particularly like worth discussing too much here. As for the other episodes, the first one I think was your kind of classic for opening episode to a season for Voltron, where like there's an action scene. You see one character sort of get the spotlight. It's not really coming off any like overly massive reveal as such, so it's more of just starting the season rather than like continuing on a plot. And in this case, it's just that Lotor is in control of things, Semdak is his main opposition, and we get this action scene where they're called out to this kind of shield station, which is shielding a like Galra labor planet from solar radiation from this kind of giant radiation band thing that keeps coming through. And instead of having a fight, you see, like, I suppose what Semdak is going to do, what he's going to offer us as a villain, is that he's going to do things that none of the other villains kind of have before. All of the others will be like power and try and confront Voltron, but instead he's like, no, this will be worse for you. Hit the shield station and basically endanger the lives of everyone on that planet, everyone on the station, and force Voltron to have to save them. And he doesn't even stick around. Like, if he had stayed around, it would have been an even crazier situation. He probably could have done some real damage to Voltron, forced everything to happen. But instead, he's just like, I don't think we can stand up to them. You do that, I'll get out of here, no one's in danger. And I think that's, so far, an interesting setup for him. And I don't really know where they're going. Is he just like a pawn? Is he just meant to be the other villain, or is there actually going to be something serious with him at some point? We'll get to that, I assume, but I like just a little moment with him. Also, Hunk kind of got the focus of the episode, which was much appreciated. I still don't think it's exactly what I or most fans of the show who've been critical of Hunk not getting any important stuff want. Because what they did here is, like, instead of, I suppose, developing his character and stuff like that, they basically just said, he wants to know a little bit more about Galra culture. Here's the character who like raised Lotor when he was younger and taught him all about the Galra. She's going to teach Hunk about this stuff, and then he uses that in the final sequence to basically get two like stubborn Galra kind of commander type characters on side again and make the plan work. He's also the one, because he's the engineer, who organizes the fixing of the shield station. So you get to see him ordering people around, and it all ends up working out just about, because we're also committing to the Shiro plot here, and Shiro is beginning to have these headaches, basically, that more or less make him like inactive for a while. He's just so focused on what's going on in his head that he just can't do anything. And here, his hand goes off the shield thing, and it seems like everyone's going to be killed, and it's, if not for Pidge being there, it would have happened. So they continue with that for like the rest of the episodes, basically up until 4, and it's just the setup that like we're seeing much more of the link between him and Hagar, to the point where I'm kind of like, what are we meant to really see about Shiro? Because I think the speculation has been like, it's a robot, it's a clone, and maybe the kind of outside bet is that it is the real Shiro, just under heavy mind control. I think after watching these first 4 episodes, I lean a little bit more towards, like, this could be the real Shiro. The whole clone thing is a possibility, but I'm not sure if they commit, like, that level of, like, resources to it. Because they've connected it more to Hagar herself, it to me feels more like a personal project, and it's just her magicking sort of control of him. But I still think the clone robot, the fact that there is maybe the real Shiro, which we met initially, is out there somewhere. But I'm not really sure just yet. But I like the setup here, given that you're going to have Keith coming back, that you give a reason for Shiro to actually like exit the stage to allow Keith to step up. The other, I suppose, main thing from the first episode was that we also saw sort of a background thing. They just casually flashed back to it, like you were almost doing it in reverse, where instead of Hagar spying on Shiro, you kind of saw Shiro having the headaches to see what Hagar was doing, and you see that she's going to Oriond, and she, by all accounts, accomplishes everything she wants to there. We know she's Altane, of course, because she's on Irva. she accomplishes what she needs to do. She gets the power that we assume Allura also has, but is maybe more in control of it, knows better how to harness it, is more used to using her powers in that way. So what is Hagar up to in the background? And that's going to be the big question going into episode 5, 6, and 7, given what happens in episode 4. But I did really like seeing at the end of it, her take off her hood, skin return to normal, the focus on the eyes also returning to normal, and a sense of like, we know she more or less has most of her memories back, but does she have it all, and how does she interpret that? Like, because I don't think she's just Unnerva anymore. There is definitely a sense of like Hagar and Unnerva are two characters, but now Hagar has the Unnerva memories back, so she's this sort of like hybrid character of like, she is this evil Hagar character, but she also knows about the whole Unnerva stuff. So she is this kind of middle ground character, and I maintain she is the best villain in the show. Like, is she borderline the best character in the show? Probably, just because of how intriguing it all is and how utterly uninteresting Zarkon was. But we'll see where they go with her. But I'm very interested to see just what the plan is, because I do ultimately still think that the end game of this show at some point is addressing like the evil quintessence which like took over and changed, drew out the evil within from Zarkon and Unnerva. And that kind of coming back, the need for our present day paladins to defeat that once and for all and somehow bring peace to the galaxy. I think that's the overall idea that's going to be happening here. I'm not really sure like what endgame on the show is going to be, but I feel that has to be something that they address. If Hagar is going to be potentially one of the big main villain antagonist characters, that is something you have to address. How much of her is Unnerva from who she was before? How much is Hagar? And how much is just being controlled by a potentially sentient form of energy that's like evil? We're not really sure. The other thing going on in the background of all of this is like a subplot is they're leaning much more heavily into romance here than they ever have before. Previously on the show, like I've never got too much of an impression from romance on the show, honestly. There's been little hints here and there. We know Lance likes Allura, and I think last season presented a little bit of like, I think Allura likes Lotor in a way that she, I think, developed this like sense of like, a crush feels like too kind of almost kiddie to call it, but like it was like that you got the impression that she was sort of attracted to him. And here they directly say like Lance has kind of gone from like caring to basically in a way like he really really likes her. I don't know if I could quite say love yet, but it's something on that level. And you see that he like sacrifices himself to save her. She like revives him. She really appreciates that he washed the mice and like the kind of relationship he's developed with them. But then her relationship with Lotor is kind of developing, and they kiss right before the reveal in episode 4. It's like, oh, they're bringing the romance drama in. Like, the shipping has gone from being this sort of like, the show isn't really hinting at everything, so it's hard to fully like commit to any sort of relationship, and it's just people who've decided on their ships already kind of having the arguments. But now it's like the show is sort of presenting its own direction. How do you feel about that? And it seems like it's Lance versus Lotor, and we don't know, like, I don't know what way I'm meant to interpret like Allura's feeling towards Lance. I think she's almost like, no, he's just that idiot character, but there might be a sense of maybe she actually does care about him, especially now that she's, I suppose, maybe fallen for Lotor, but now he's revealed to be like this, like doing all these horrific things. Maybe she realizes the benefit of Lance, but I can't really see romance being overly on the table given how much the action, the drama has kind of spiked up again. So I appreciate the show for doing it, in that like I've been critical in the past of shows where they've teased romance, like the tiniest of little things of like, are you going to do this? And then they never do anything with it. Like TMNT 2012, anyone that just didn't do anything basically for the most part with some of the main relationships. Here, I appreciate it for like kind of switching from being like, okay, we've sort of been teasing it, like it's sort of here, we can like, there's enough to justify shipping. Now they're actually committing to a direction, and I like it because it adds an extra layer to things that when we're not in action moments, we can potentially have romantic developments actually happen. So that's definitely a cool thing I think is in the show. How will it affect the fandom, which is known for being quite crazy when it comes to shipping? I'm not entirely sure. I tend to stay away from most of that stuff, just because I tend to only really ship once the show has kind of decided what ships it's actually trying to go for, rather than making my selections beforehand. So we'll see where that goes. Let's see. Episode 2. I love that they did this. This is something they had to do. I think this was the one guarantee going into this season that we would get the explanation on like Keith's basically origin. What happened like with the Galra being on Earth and stuff like that. And in the end, it's simpler than you expect. It's not this really complicated thing you couldn't figure out. It was just, I think the key to speculating good about this was literally just really laying out the facts and the situation going on at the time, and it sort of all fit together. So it's simpler than you expected, but it's still really good. I loved how they went about showing it, in that you get the whole like, oh, we'll explain later, you know, there's this more important stuff going on, we'll explain all of this later on. But then they get to the quantum field where like it's every so often just bursting with light, and because the two of them are right next to each other, they effectively share memories. Like Keith gets to see Crolia's past, Crolia gets to see Keith's past, and a little hint of the future as well, because it's all about time and so on. I thought that was a really cool way to show us these flashbacks without kind of just doing the thing of like, she begins to talk to him and we cover flashback and she narrates it. Giving a mechanism for it to actually happen, like really happen, like for Keith to literally see it, not just get like talked to about what happened, but like us seeing a flashback that the character has also seen. So I like that, and yeah, just kind of showing that they kind of established Crolia has always been like working for the Blades. That the Blades purposefully put undercover agents in scouting parties that were searching for the lines. They found the red line and were searching for the others based on its signal. They found Earth earlier on, and the idea that they basically set up is that, yeah, they had the ability at the time to find Earth constantly, but what she did was she took down the other fighter ship, she found the blue line, but she obviously crashed on the planet, and that's how Keith's father found her. They kind of, obviously formed a friendship initially, then into a relationship. He committed to helping her protect the blue line, and obviously they had a child, which was Keith. And then after obviously a couple of years have passed between like her initially coming here and later on, more Galra scout ships arrive here sensing the same thing. And they basically established that this incident that happens is that like Keith's father gets shot, they're gonna like blow up all of these ships to get out of here, and the result is basically that they accomplish this, but like Keith's father does get injured. They more or less kind of move past it and kind of say it wasn't overly serious, but for her, Crolia, she has to protect the people she cares about the most, which is Keith's father and Keith himself. And she decides that we can't keep doing this. We can't just keep waiting. Every couple of years some scout ships will arrive. We have to go on this crazy mission to destroy them. That's no way to raise a family. I have to go back and from the inside like use information to stop them ever going near Earth. And I suppose the idea is that in the last like 16 or so years, 17, I can't really remember the exact ages, but in the last couple of years she has sort of stopped the focus on Earth by being part of the Galra Empire and kind of directing them away from it. But obviously, the whole series kicks off in a way because the blue line is found again. So she could only like hold them off for so much, but she does. So that's the basic explanation on that. As we continue to go on, you obviously see he gets to see kind of her relationship. He gets, I suppose, the explanation very clearly from her perspective why she left, why he's only meeting his mother now, and he kind of understands that. She also gets to, in a way, they only show one scene. They show Keith at his father's grave. I think that's what it's meant to be. And the implication is that over the 2 years they spent together, once they get through the portal into the whole time is different area, she probably, over the course of all those pulses, got to see Keith's father's, like, the rest of his life. And you'd see they focused on, I suppose, the tragic thing of, like, she sees the memory of Keith after his father has died, and it's confirmation for her that, this person she loved is dead. And Keith is all she has left of her family. So I like that. You saw her kind of protecting Keith earlier on in the episode when the first pulse came in, showing that the relationship is still there. It just took time. And you just get them kind of like bonding as they spend the 2 years kind of going through the portal to like investigate this. Keith ends up sort of helping and befriending this crazy space teleporting wolf thing, which is really cool. I love the design on it. It's one of the coolest kind of crazy animal designs I've seen in a while. I think it's really, really awesome. Just that Keith has this like pet that seems like it's like has all these cool powers as well. So I'm interested to see if they develop that a bit more, like cover what exactly it can do, what sort of animal species it actually is. But I definitely like that reveal. And then the end of the episode 2 is them coming out of the portal, them finding this planet, landing there, and finding an Altean. And it's just like, what? Like it's the show's big premise that there's only like 2 Alteans left. Well, 3, I suppose, technically, on Irva as well. There's only a couple of Alteans left. They're wiped out otherwise. And now all of a sudden there's one. And in episode 4, just what it does, I think, like I loved episode 2. I thought episode 2 was great. But then episode 4 comes along and suddenly, obviously they do the whole Shiro thing, but the whole colony subplot, Lotor saving the Altean race basically, but then experimenting on it, I did not expect that. That's like a new plot for this season they've sort of introduced, but it works because I think you've grown to trust Lotor over the past kind of couple of seasons. How he's presented in the first 2 episodes at least, you are on his side because you almost expect going into this season for him to be jealous of Allura, perhaps, feeling some sense of like, I could have had this power, but I have to use Allura. Imagine if I had it on my own, it'd be so much like easier to rule without having to constantly use Allura to do everything. But he seems nothing but like happy for her that like, okay, I didn't get the powers, but like we're working together. It's a partnership to make all of this happen. The only, I suppose, slight sense is that a lot of the scenes between Allura and Lotor that are towards romance, he's saying like the same stuff to her kind of over and over again. Just that like, we work so well together, look how amazing it is, you're going to live like fulfill like your father's destiny. And it's kind of like, it feels a little bit like, is he kind of sort of manipulating her here, or are we meant to just interpret this as like their relationship is actually just developing into romance? I think because there is a darker side to him, you lean in the direction of like, okay, there is a level of manipulation. And especially this huge reveal that like so much of like Allura's character has been about the fact that like her people are gone, her father, like all these other people are gone, and he had this the whole time that there are other Alteans out there, that he's done all of this, that there to a degree isn't any specific kind of like need to make anything happen to like bring them back. Like they're here. that he could have made her so happy just by telling her about this in the first place. But because I suppose he deep down knows that what he did, the reason he couldn't say, is because no one would ever accept what he did. And that, I think, is the most shocking reveal of all. Of like, initially it's kind of like the new female Altain character, whose name I forget. It begins with an or. I don't remember it right now, but again, I literally just watched the episode like half an hour ago. She, as she begins her explanation, it's like, oh, wow, more reason to like Lotor. He reacted to the destruction of Altea and kind of rounded up all of the Altains who weren't on their own planet, who were out there doing other stuff, and formed them into, I suppose, an initial colony of their own, and then started the second colony to, I suppose, help them grow in some way. That seems fine. But then they start to get into the mystery of, like, people are being selected for some reason from the initial colony to be sent to the second colony. Families are being separated. She's becoming suspicious of all of this. And just the tragic nature of how they go about, going into what happened to her brother, that he's taken away. He believes in Lotor completely. All of these Altains, for the most part, treat Lotor as a godlike figure, basically, almost, for what they've done, for what he's done for the Altain race. And then he comes back, and he's disheveled, he basically has no energy, and dies in front of his sister. And it's revealed, obviously, later on when they go up to the second colony, which is like the moon, that he's been harnessing quintessence from, I suppose, Altaeans who have a high concentration of quintessence, or have the ability to interact with quintessence, that ability that like Allura has, kind of, in a way, or something like that. I don't know the exact specifics, but like, and then his explanation when they confront him about it is like, I did this because it's something I had to do. It's the classic sort of mad scientist type thing of like, we had to make this progress. It involved sacrifices, but it was for the the greater good. That I'm helping the Altain race for the future, but unfortunately it means at times having to kill off a good portion of the people that we have currently. And of course our hero characters are not going to agree with that. That is an evil thing to be, I suppose, that removed from like the personal aspect of like, you care about people, Lotor, but like you've gone too far by killing anyone to accomplish what you wanted to do. Like, you didn't have to do that. I get you scientifically kind of thought you had to, and this is where you're seeing the fact that he is definitely his mother's son. She went too far with some of her experiments. You see that Lotor's going too far here as well. And they both feel they're right. They kind of don't see the problem in what they've done. So that's what's so interesting about all of this. And yeah, the betrayal from Allura, because she literally just kisses him. They've been teasing the kiss for multiple episodes at this point. They have the kiss. She walks in. They all explain it to her. And her reaction, I love the animation on this. She just judo throws him right into the ground. And it feels like the most violent, like, strong act we've sort of seen in the show. Of just, he's KO'd immediately, just that throw. That's how, like, emotionally charged, how aggressively she kind of planted him into the ground. He's just immediately knocked out. But then suddenly everything kicks off. Hagar like activates Shiro properly, like basically taking control of him, like he's working for her now. Then Oxia and Ezawar come in and they steal the ships, and like Keith obviously is back at this point. They have to explain a little bit of this. They explain the backstory. He just immediately comes in, takes, like, who's going to pad the black line? I am. And the reaction of, like, yeah, he's older. And in a way, it makes looking back at the whole weird 2-year time skip thing that happened for them in, like, time chamber type stuff. They did that because they had to have him mature to be the leader. And it makes sense now that he is the leader because he's older than everyone. He's been through more in a way. But, like, there's still, I suppose, room to grow here. And that's what's going to be so interesting for the remaining 3 episodes, to see, are they properly going to explain Project Kuron, who Shiro is, what's going on with Shiro and stuff like that? or will that be left for later on? And the reveal for this season was literally just, him being brain controlled, mind controlled. But yeah, I think that's my initial thoughts on the first half of the season. I really liked it. Episode 3, of course, as the fantasy episode, as I said, I enjoyed it, but it's not really needed. It doesn't feel important, but it's fine. Everything else I did really, really like. I think episode 2 and 4 are obviously the highlights. 1 is, I think, that solid opening episode, but it's nothing particularly amazing. But very, very impressed so far with it, and I'm very, very excited to upload this and watch the remaining 3 episodes. So that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.